Welcome back to Bleav in Softball. I'm your host, Jenna, and however you got here today, whether it was an audio podcast platform like Apple, Spotify, etc., or watching on YouTube, thank you. Subscribe and rate the show wherever you get your pods if you haven't yet. You can also follow us on Instagram and X at Bleav in Softball. That's BLEAV. And there's merch. Click the link in our bio on either of those pages or go to shop.bleav.com to purchase 3 different shirts covering our bases, safer out, catch you soon in 3 different colors as well. All right, let's go through today's batting order. First, we'll be covering our bases. I'll share some call outs from the softball world. Then we'll head into today's interview with Marissa Young, Duke head coach. It's not the first time that she's been on the show, but it's been a few years and a lot has changed since she was on back in season 2. We talked to her right before the NCAA tournament and right before regionals started, and now the Blue Devils are on the road for supers. So it should be a good one. Then we'll end things with the foul tip of the week, where we share tips to help us get better. All right, let's go. Covering our bases. BetOnline is your number one source for the NBA and NHL playoffs this season. Every stat, every matchup, and even live odds while the games are being played. When the game's over, head on over to our online casino and get in on a game of blackjack or poker, or unwind with one of our 150 slots games. Head to the website today to get in on the action. Don't forget to use promo code BLEAV, that's BLEAV, for your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Bet online, the game starts here. And as I always say, Rip It Sports is where getting your gear starts, and that's right here as well. Another long weekend at the field for regionals for me, another perfect time to wear my Ringer turfs. Actually got a couple compliments on them this time around too. And Rip It, just by the way, they have so many different types of gear for all parts of the game. So not just footwear, but they have equipment, apparel, accessories, protective pieces, you name it. And they have gear for lots of different sports too. Volleyball, soccer, general training. I mean, who can ever have enough workout clothes? No one. So I just think that the best part of their mission, though, is to elevate female athletic performance. They understand that women and girls deserve gear specifically tailored to our needs to fit right, perform well, and meet our unique demands. Even better news, Rip It is offering an exclusive 15% discount. Just use the code Jenna15 when you shop at ripit.com. That's JENNA15. This is your chance to experience the same quality gear that helps so many women and girls excel. To me, one of the times of the year that college softball excels the most is super regionals. It's one of my favorite times of the year. But first, I do want to look a little bit at the regionals that we just witnessed. Despite 14 out of 16 seeds holding by the end of the weekend, there actually was still quite a bit of parity on the paths to get there. So it was hard to get there. 8 out of 16, so half of the regional finals had 3 seeds in them. 4 on each side of the bracket, interestingly enough. And 4 regionals needed the if necessary game to determine who would move on to supers. 3 of those 4, by the way, were also with 3 seeds. So I just think the days of running straight through regionals are essentially over. And I want to give a special shout out to Cal State Fullerton, specifically Hannah Becerra. These are a group that are one of those teams that made it to that regional final. In their case, it was at Stanford. Hannah was on the show last year. She's a senior this year. She's another Becerra at third base. Taylor Becerra from ASU from the first season for the OGs who remember that. She actually just got engaged as well. So side note, congrats to her. But she was a third baseman too. So is Hannah. So was I in my day. And although none of us are related as far as we know, we are all connected. And I did get to meet Hannah's family finally this past weekend too. So Hannah just finished her college career, Big West champ, regional finalist, and just a big impact for her team throughout her 4 years. So I just want to say congrats to her. And now it's super regionals in the NCAA tournament all of a sudden. Such a quick turnaround. And supers, by the way, reminder, they've only existed since 2005. That was when they first implemented this round in the NCAA tournament. So almost 20 years that we've seen this. OKC is what it's all about. And the World Series teams are decided now this weekend in Supers. At the same time, a lot of other stuff is going on all at once. So in the postseason, it also feels like it's portal season. The transfer portal is now open. We're seeing a lot of movement already, despite the season not being completely over yet. For a lot of teams, it is, right? Everyone who's not competing in Supers, their seasons are over. So nearly all of Oregon State, that roster, for example, have entered the portal, which is not a surprise, unfortunately, given the realignment with the Pac-12 going away and Oregon State being sort of up in the air while trying to find a new permanent home. They'll be with the WCC the next couple of seasons, but it's still trying to be ironed out. A lot of movement, same as there was for women's basketball, for example. Multiple Washington players have also entered the portal, including All-American Ruby Malin. There's Riley Holtorf, Kinsey Fiedler, and there's a lot of movement in some of these other programs as well that maybe people wouldn't have guessed outright as much. And I would say maybe there's something else going on with the program, but there is going to be this part of the side effect of the conference alignment as well, is having people decide whether or not they want to travel, what they want their schedules to look like. And with some of these teams, particularly on the West Coast, moving to different conferences next year, that's going to be a factor as well. I do have to say, I'm not a fan of the transfer portal opening while the NCAA tournament is still going on. Again, I realize that most people's seasons are over, but there are coaches who are at the Women's College World Series that are having to look at the portal in between games. Like, that's the nature of where we're at right now as a game. And I think some of the players are still in school too this year, especially if they're on the quarter system, like UCLA, Stanford, for example. So it just feels like we're jumping the gun a little bit here. And just to be clear, I'm not saying that we should outlaw transferring. That is not at all what the point is. The point is that I don't love the timing of the way that it's set up now. And a lot of things are changing in addition to this. We knew a lot of changes were coming, but now some are starting to be more and more of a reality. There's also some early reporting of NCAA and Power 5 conferences agreeing to allow schools to pay players directly. So they're settling some cases from the past that have already existed, and they're looking forward as well. So this is kind of being seen as a point that could reshape the face of college athletics in the US. I'm still processing and looking into this myself. It was just announced at the time that I'm recording this, but what I think is important to point out is that it's just the beginning. There's only going to be more change and more developments coming. The same is true for the coaching carousel. Lots of movement already on this front. Deanna Gumpf is retiring from Notre Dame. That was a huge announcement. A long time, almost 3 decades that she spent with the Fighting Irish. And then some people who we know really well from this show, like Vic Hayward is the new head coach at Nevada. She's a Believer a few times over, as we know. She's been on the show almost the most, probably second most out of any of the guests. And she's been on staff in her career leading up to this with multiple Believers as well. Cindy Ball Malone at UCF, Stacey Newman at San Diego State, and then, of course, Heather Tarr at UW most recently. So now she's back in the Mountain West, and this time she's the top dog in the Wolfpack this time around. So I just want to say congrats to her. She's also, as we know, been an Athletes Unlimited pioneer, and to see her doing big things pretty quickly, her growth as a coach has come around is cool. And speaking of the pro leagues, players are starting to sign with Athletes Unlimited, players who have not previously played with AU and who maybe had more experience in the WPF, for example, like Kentucky's Kayla Kwolek, Jordan Rudd, who's been on this show, Northwestern alum and Purdue assistant coach this past season, and counting, I think. So I just want to say congrats to them as well for getting a new experience in the pro landscape. And AUX, don't forget, starts right after the Women's College World Series on June 10th across ESPN channels. So to bring it home, lots going on within the NCAA tournament itself. So there's plenty surrounding it, as I've made clear, as we all know, but the actual NCAA tournament is huge. And in terms of what's new this week, so the D1 softball podcast, Amanda Lorenz and I interviewed Arizona freshman phenom Reagan Shockey after they won the regional in Fayetteville. As an unseeded team, they won again in Arkansas after the team had did that a couple years prior for super regionals. Now they're in Stillwater for supers. So chatting with her at a pretty big moment in time. And we also talk about our favorite regional performances and make our picks and sort of breakdowns for all the supers in depth. So definitely recommend tuning in. D1 Softball also has you covered on the site. Man, there is so much content there. I wrote a super regional preview for the Stanford Super with LSU at Stanford. Definitely recommend checking that out, as well as everything else that the team has been working on. Graham Hayes, Rhiannon Potke, Justin McLeod. The last two are also Bleavers, by the way, if you remember. They've been outstanding with all the content they're churning out, as well as Shelly Carlin, who's covering the Los Angeles Regional and Super. Also, my first feature with D1 Softball was just published with Mackenzie Fickey. She is a pitcher on the UCLA staff who 6 months ago, she thought her softball career was over for a couple of years. She got a phone call from Kelly Inouye Perez. Everything changed. Now, all of a sudden, she's a Pac-12 champion 2 times over regular season, as well as the tournament, and she's participating in the NCAA tournament with the most storied program in college softball history. So just learning about her story and how she got from one point to the next is very inspiring. So I recommend checking that out as well. And then in terms of what's coming up, I'm doing on-site coverage at the Stanford Super Regional again with D1 Softball, just like the regionals. And again, lots of info on d1softball.com. So follow along our social channels as well at D1 Softball, especially on Instagram and Twitter. It's got a lot of stuff for you. But someone who's on the field for Supers as well, actually competing, is today's guest. Last time she was on in season 2, back in 2021, we talked about quite a lot. Building a new program from scratch, becoming the first Black female head coach in Duke history, setting goals that matter, the ACC landscape, hyping up her players and her staff, the crazy, quote unquote, pitching mindset that you have to be in the circle that she knows about from her playing days, and lots more. So now we talk about all the things that have happened since then, especially now as she's trying to make history, taking Duke to the Women's College World Series for the first time. So let's head into the interview. She is the Duke head coach, 2024 ACC Coach of the Year, regular season and tournament champion, 3-time All-American at Michigan, and Big Ten pitcher and player of the year in her time, Marissa Young. Thanks, Coach, for joining.
Thanks for having me.
I know we were talking a little bit before how you've been on the show before, but it was back in 2021. That was season 2 of the show 3 years ago. I feel like a lot has happened since then.
It has. It was definitely the heartbreak of our COVID season being cut short, which I felt like was really the uptick of our program. It was the beginning of our breakout year. And yeah, it's been a lot has happened since then.
Yeah. At the time, we talked a lot about just what all went into starting a program from scratch the way that you did. And I remember you saying you had like 400 emails in your inbox, like after announcing that Duke was going to start this softball program. And now fast forward, here we are now. What are your biggest takeaways for how the program has evolved in the last few years?
I think just having a strong vision and believing in it when maybe no one else did, and surrounding yourself by around people that, you know, are as passionate as you are about player development and doing things the right way and having high standards, and it produced success. Really proud of the team and the players that chose Duke when there was really nothing to sign on to besides a new program, and how far they've helped me take this.
And speaking of players that chose Duke, the first one that did so, Peyton St. George, we had on the show as well. And I was kind of joking with her because I was like, you like to be first, don't you? You know, she was first at Duke, first person to sign on, first team at Duke, right? And the people like that have come through the program already, like you're starting to build that alumni base too, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, we had about 15 alums back this past weekend for regionals, and it was just surreal to win it again with a lot of that group who was part of our first ACC championship team, and just to have them in the stands and for them to see what this program has grown to, really, with them being the pioneers of it, was extra special.
I saw some signs that they made too. I think that Peyton actually had posted on social media and things, and they're calling you Marissa, like Rizz, like the Gen Z term Rizz, meaning charisma. For those that don't know, it's what the kids say these days. But I love that. How do you feel about them calling you that?
I think I had to Google it first and foremost to find out what it was, make sure that it wasn't a bash. But no, I love the group. I love, the relationship that we've continued to build after their time at Duke, and being able to see how much success they're having in their careers now is just makes it all worth it to know that, you're building strong women, not just softball players, but they're going to be successful in their career. And I think that they've come to know me as, in a different realm. Probably think I've loosened up and lightened up on the next generation, but that's part of it. You get old and some of the things you used to fret about don't matter anymore. But yeah, just love the kids and our time together.
In Marissa, we trust, I think, was my favorite sign that I saw from from the conference tournament. That was a good one. That was so funny. But, that was something that Peyton mentioned a lot, actually, when she was on the show, is how much you and the program as a whole focuses on the person, not just the athlete. Like, some of the cool things she talked about were around like mental health, where she was like, yeah, Coach Young would sometimes be like, hey, did anyone know that so-and-so was struggling? And people would be like, wow, I didn't realize that. And just to kind of help cultivate supporting each other and being okay with talking about it. She said you guys had like a mental health day they could take, no questions asked, when they need it, for example. Why has that been so important to you?
I mean, mental health has been at the forefront since COVID. And I feel like, our kids, especially here at Duke, just feel so much, an enormous amount of pressure to be perfect and to do everything right and be great in the classroom, on the field, in their personal life. And that can become the weight of the world on their shoulders. And, even as an adult, there's times where like, I just need a day off to kind of catch up on life, catch my breath. And I promise I'll be better tomorrow. And wanted to sort of give them that empowerment to make those decisions on their own. Of there's no sense in showing up to practice or to the stadium and going through the motions if a day at home is really going to make you that much better for tomorrow. You're entitled to that. They work their butts off. I don't ever question their loyalty and their commitment to this program. And so I think giving them that opportunity really helped them realize like we don't have unrealistic expectations of them. We do realize that they are people, and some days you're going to have a bad day, or the week is really piled up on you, and you matter. And we want to give you what you need and not just feel like we're just running you into the ground, because it's all about softball. So I think that has really helped us start conversations of it's okay to not be okay, and really work to normalize struggles that all of us, me included, deal with. Life happens. Life throws you challenges and obstacles, and being surrounded by people that are going to support you and not pass judgments is a really big part of that process of getting through it.
There's such a level of trust and also safety, like feeling safe, that I would imagine is with the players, but then also with you and your staff. Like you said, it's all of you are people at the end of the day.
Yeah, absolutely. And as a mother, it's something I, really, as my kids have gotten older, you understand how to kind of coach each player differently and connect with them and reach them where they are.
Yeah, easier said than done. But I've been impressed with hearing from players like Peyton and others with them being able to feel that in your program at such an early point in the program's existence still.
Yeah, I think it's a big part of our foundation. I think the trust, the just understanding that it's more than softball. We've talked about that from day one. Living a life of excellence is really important to us. And I think if in order for you to be able to be at your best, you have to feel safe and know that you're going to be supported on your good and your bad days.
And I have to ask you too, just on a personal note for you, I saw in your post-game interview after winning the ACC championship yet again, it was the first time that your husband got to be in person at the stadium this season after last year with the health crisis that you're all dealing with right after Super Regionals. I can't believe what you've done as a person, by the way, with your strength.
Thank you.
And being so open about it, let alone the coaching aspect of it. But just what did that mean to be able to have came there.
Yeah, it's been an incredibly difficult journey, and obviously would not have gotten to this point without my faith and my family being able to support. My parents have been tremendous in helping me manage, the kids and being a care provider and still trying to work. Um, but my coaching staff and my team have been extra supportive since day one and just really led me to feel like I needed to take care of home and that they would take care of the rest, that I didn't have anything to worry about. And man, they've just flourished this year, just being able to see them play and be free. And softball has really been my escape from, all of the tough times that we're still dealing with to this point. So softball puts a smile on my face. I love coming to work every day. And, for my husband to be able to come to the first game all season, it was a sellout crowd, largest crowd we've ever had, program history at the ACC tournament, and to win it all, it was extra special.
It was special to watch, I'll tell you that as well. Do you feel like softball has been a good outlet for your family as a whole throughout this? Obviously, a lot of responsibility that goes along, with coaching a team like this, but just for the whole family to have something that you're also invested in.
Yes, softball has definitely been an outlet. We obviously are a softball family. I coach, my husband coaches, and our girls boys play baseball. So softball's on all the time. It's what we talk about at the kitchen table. So for him to be able to turn on the TV and watch Duke softball playing and doing so well, definitely has been inspiring for him. To be able to see me continue doing what I love despite everything that we've been through.
Yeah. And aren't you at the point where there's some recruiting happening with your kids? Is that weird, right? Because there are other programs then in the mix, but you're also coaching yours.
Yeah, absolutely. This fall, I had the opportunity to take my younger daughter on her official visit to UCLA, and she came on a visit here to Duke. And yeah, it is different to be the parent in that seat of seeing how other programs do things and what the recruiting game looks like from a different seat. But she's obviously both of them committed now to other programs, and I'm just excited to see them, leave the nest and spread their wings and have great careers.
And if you were to play against them, how do you think that would go?
I'm out for blood, so I feel really bad for them because I am going to show no mercy, and I know how to pitch to both of them.
I love that so much. We had a situation like that when I played too. When I was at Stanford, one of my teammates, it was Mike White's daughter, actually, Nairi White, and he knows her so well, right? We got destroyed in that game. And I think there was some tension, right? Father-daughter tension, but that competitiveness. And at the same time, though, that's what we all are as competitors, right? So it's not something that you turn off. If anything, you turn it up a little bit.
Absolutely.
How do you think they would feel going up against you?
I'm sure it's going to be that mind game. What is mom thinking? So hopefully they just trust themselves and go play the game.
Yeah. Yeah. But off the field, like after the handshakes are done, back to family.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. I want them to succeed, just not against me.
Yeah. Yeah. That's the best way to put it. That's exactly right. But then them getting to see what you do too in your program while they've been growing up. I mean, what a gift for people who want to play at this level to be able to witness up close like that. And then you host the conference tournament and things like that as well. Like that must be a really cool way to grow up, I would think.
Yeah, it is. And, some days at the end of the day, I'm still mom to them. And they're like, oh, you're doing work, like working on a scouting report. Oh, that's cool. But I think once they're in the thick of it, they'll have a, better appreciation for all that goes on behind the scenes and, how many meetings and how much thought process goes into it from a coach's standpoint.
Yeah, even conversations like this, right? Like add it to the list of your to-dos during the season. And your other kids, meaning your players, that really does seem like that's the type of relationship that it is, right? And what success you all have had so far. I know you're far from being done, right? But the fact that Jayla Wright was the pitcher of the year in the ACC, Claire Davidson's the player of the year, I mean, Avega, the defensive player of the year, like what tangible evidence of the hard work that they have done and that you all have done as a team.
Yeah, and it's proof that you've got to stick to the process. For all of them, it wasn't overnight success. And I'm just proud of their toughness and resiliency and perseverance to keep going and trust the process, and to see the game giving it back to them with the kind of success that they're having. I'm just, thrilled for them, because they all work so hard and they've wanted it so bad for so long. It's great to see it coming together.
And I have to ask you about Jayla in particular too, just with your pitching background, right? Too, I think there's that extra layer seeing her flourish, and just the evolution of her personally from last year to this year. What's it been like witnessing and playing a part in that?
It's a joy. I mean, she just is such a competitor. She's a fun personality. She wants to be in the spotlight. She wants all the accolades. And so really it was just like teaching her how to manage that want. Sometimes you can want it too bad. And so, putting so much pressure on one pitch over the next, it was like you are living and dying by every single pitch. You just need to kind of calm down a little bit and understand we're running a distance race, not a sprint. And she's had a lot of adversity, but to come in as a transfer, and again, to trust me and to follow my lead and put in the work that she has to evolve and continue to get better year after year. It's awesome to see her go out on top.
I just love seeing those evolutions from all sides of the game too. Like I mentioned, a pitcher of the year player and defensive player, right? So there's every aspect of the game covered right there with Claire and Amina as well.
Yes.
Yeah. As a pitcher, I'm sure that the defense is something you will always appreciate as well.
Yeah, those ESPN plays and diving catches, that is a pitcher's best friend.
Yeah. But also, like I said at the top of this, player of the year in the Big Ten too during your time. Like you hit as well. Like nobody forget this, right? Like don't sleep on Marissa in the plate. So I'm sure that that's fulfilling as well, seeing that side with like Claire and others on your team.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm glad to be at a point. I said in the beginning of my coaching years, I'll be glad when I'm at the point where people stop talking about me, in my playing days. Cause like I'm coaching now, and I want the accolades to be about what I've accomplished as a coach. So I'm glad that we're flipping that switch.
Yeah. Yeah. How do you think competitiveness translates from player to coach? Because obviously when you're playing, it's like there are things that you control about your own approach, performance, things like that. But when you're translating that to coaching other people who are on the field, how do you think that energy works?
I do think it took me some time to figure out how to reach players that are motivated by different things other than I was as a player, right? You think, oh, well, this worked for me. This is how I approached the game. This is how I thought about it. And you want to force that down some people's throat. And it's just, that's not what works for them. I think Claire is definitely one of those players of, she doesn't want the spotlight. She's not, going to eat, breathe, sleep softball. And that's what works for her when she's more carefree, less is more. Like that's when she's at her best. So for me, learning, how to kind of push the right buttons for players that had operated differently for me as a player definitely took some time.
See, this is why we talk about how women, especially who are in athletics, make such great leaders just in the business world, even like understanding how to manage teams like this. Because to me, it's not just like there's a teaching aspect to coaching, but it's also the element of like inspiring other people. And that sounds like really, oh yeah, you just want to inspire other people, but there's actually quite a bit to actually inspire somebody or motivate somebody in a way that works for them when there are so many different people on the team. Like that's something I'm always impressed by with coaches.
Yeah, and it takes a lot of work and effort to put in the time with each of the players to figure out what makes them tick. It's somebody, after they make an error, somebody needs a pat on the back, and others are like, don't look at me, I'm embarrassed, and others are just like, tell me you believe in me. So it is that, just really figuring out the X's and the O's, I think, are the easy part. That comes instinct, and it's a part of your instincts. You understand that. But it's really getting to know the people that are part of your team. And they're changing and growing every year. So every year it's a new group and a new aspect that you're figuring out how to manage.
Yeah, that's where all the new challenges come into play. Because every once in a while, someone will be like, "Well, it's this, coaching's the same, the game's the same." It's like so much changes, and the people change. There's so much that goes into it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. But now you have a chance after hosting the ACC conference tournament. You have a chance. You're now going to be hosting again for regionals, getting to do postseason at home. It's just such a good feeling. At least that's what I remember from playing. So, from that perspective, like how nice is it to stay in Durham?
It's great. And the way that, our crowd has grown here, the support that we have, our kids love the area, and just being able to stay in your comfort zone for another weekend is really, really critical. I think it's important to your recovery, and just the feel of confidence, knowing the playing field and all of that will really help us into the weekend.
A lot of people felt very strongly that you all should have had a top 8 seed. I'm sure you've heard this a ton recently, which would have allowed you to host super regionals as well, just like you did last year. You ended up at number 10. What's the conversation like with the team when that happened?
There was a lot of disappointment, and we had the selection show at our stadium for the first time, open to the public, and really hearing the fans boos and displeasure kind of weighed on us. But our kids are great. It just adds fuel to their fire. They've had a chip on their shoulder since day one. And I told them we still have the opportunity to accomplish everything that we want to accomplish, which is getting to the World Series. Doesn't matter who, what, when, or where. We just got to go out and play our game, and let the chips fall where they may.
It's true. It's like one of those things where like people will ask me all the time, well, like, what was it like on selection Sunday when you were playing? It's like you're excited to be playing, like number one. But number two, it's like, yeah, you kind of let yourself feel whatever you feel in that moment, whether it's like, oh, I think we earned more than that, or if you're overjoyed, wonderful. But then it is, you kind of have to move on quickly. It's like a few days later, you're playing.
Yeah. Yeah. I told them if we're wasting any more time or energy focused on the woulda, shoulda, couldas, we're not locked in on what we need to be doing, which is who we need to go beat this weekend.
Yeah. Yeah. And honestly, like being on the road for supers, like you said, you mentioned chip on your shoulder a little bit, right? Like maybe it can be turned into an advantage at the end of it.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, it's all about how you choose to respond.
Yeah. And the trajectory of the program, it just gets better every year, right? Which is so cool to see. That's like my favorite thing. When it's up and to the right is the trend. That's all we can ask for, right?
Absolutely.
And I know the getting over the hump in terms of getting to Oklahoma City, as someone who was so close more than once but didn't get there when they played, I have been really excited about watching your program specifically get over that hump potentially. What do you think it's going to take to do that this time?
A Bleav. I think that we had it last year, and we were that close last year, but I think with all of the freshmen that we had, they were just a little unsure. Could we get there? And I think this year, this group has come back determined. They believe in themselves. They've overcome a lot of adversity, and they really feel like they're built for it.
How do you think the goals for the program have changed? I mean, of course, always want to go to Oklahoma City, always want to win, all of those things. But when it comes to going from being in the early stages of a program to now you've really started to build this early stage of a dynasty at Duke in a way. How do those goals change over time?
I don't think they change. I think how we operate changes. I think that there's a lot of top down leadership in our program from our upperclassmen, and how that they empower the underclassmen. I mean, you look at Maya Burgess and how she's performing right now at the end of the season as a freshman. It really is just, the sign of growth that happens within our program. And that's what we're really proud of, is just continuing to be learners of the game, that our game continues to get better as the season goes on, so that people are ready when their number's called. And so I think the trajectory of the program is like there's never that need to have a reset year or a rebuild year, because you're building all season long. And then the kids that come in next year, like, wow, the bar's set really high because of what that group just accomplished. And so that's the same goal and expectation that they want to carry forward, is just, build on what the class before you has done.
And regardless of the end result, because we can't control that, especially in the moment, what do you think would need to happen for you to look back on, whether it's this specific Duke team this year or just in general later down the line when you're looking back at your time at Duke? What would need to happen to feel like, okay, this was success? What does success look like on a high level?
To be honest, I feel like we've done it. I think that we have exceeded expectations, and to bring home, a second ACC championship trophy in 4 years, to be in the top 5 is just, who would have thought? And this group is just so excited about that, and they want to keep Duke softball looked at as, a powerhouse moving forward. So I think we've done it, and I'm just excited to see where it continues.
Yeah. And the ACC is so much more than just Florida State now. I mean, it always was, but I just think the recognition is there at a higher level, right, than it used to be, largely because of you guys, Clemson, just up leveling. Do you feel like there is a discrepancy between maybe the general perception of the ACC versus the reality of the competition that you guys live in every day?
I mean, I think that the SEC is still the end-all be-all in college softball, and the ACC has grown and improved in so many different ways, but I think that, it's still going to continue to take a backseat, unfortunately, to the SEC. So we have to do better to continue to grow our conference, to continue to get teams better where we're competing at the top, and showing that the ACC is a conference to be reckoned with.
And 5 teams making the tournament. I kind of call you all the big 4 with, Florida State, you guys, Clemson, Virginia Tech. But how about Virginia too? That's some good representation.
Yeah, they've had a tremendous year.
Yeah, that's really cool. I mean, I'm all about coast to coast softball. Like, I just think it's what it's all about at the end of the day, and what you guys are doing in the ACC. I'm excited to get a little bit more involved with it too next year when Stanford and Cal join over here from the Bay Area. It's going to add another layer, which is all new to everybody, but more dimensions for the ACC coming.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think talent is being spread across the country, and you see it. It's anybody's game on any given day, and you love to see that in our sport.
Yeah. Is there anything that maybe not everybody knows, or even if they do, that you want to reinforce or just bring to light that they should know about Duke softball?
I think these women are just incredible in our program. They're champions on and off the field. I talked a lot about the alums that have come back, and, besides winning the 2 championships we've won, what I'm most proud of is every player that has graduated from our program has had either a job or admission into grad school before they left here. And so they are working really hard in the classroom and on the field, and, achieving great things, which we're proud of our ability to grow them as people.
Yeah. Yeah. That's one thing that I'm excited about with Stanford joining the ACC. I feel like this sort of nerd rivalry could potentially emerge, with Duke and Stanford.
Yeah, absolutely.
I would love it. I would definitely love it. Well, it's been awesome having you. Before I let you go, I am going to play a game that we did play last time, but we're going to mix up the questions a little bit.
Okay.
Just to end, like we do with every guest. So it's safe or out, just to give you a refresher. I'll bring up a topic. If you like it or you agree with it, you call it safe.
Okay.
If you don't, then you call it out.
Okay. All right.
Okay. So the first one is video review being allowed to see if the runners are leaving early. Safe or out?
Safe.
Safe. Okay. Tell me more.
I think that it adds a layer to the game of, you've got to be strategic and smart. It's changed, a lot of runners that leave early and get those extra bases on steals. think it kind of levels the playing field.
Yeah, I could see that. What do you think of if someone hits a home run and then it's called back because it turns out a runner was reviewed to have leaving early on base?
I think it goes back to the details, right? If you're practicing doing it right all the time, then you shouldn't be worried about it. So not my favorite use of it, but I can see it.
Yeah. I feel like everyone was really upset about like the out of the box rule for a while and then got more used to it, right? Too. Change is always
Yes.
an adjustment.
Yes.
Yeah. All right, that was the first one. Second one is conference realignment. Safer out.
Out.
It's tough, right? It's tough.
Yeah. I think the as many games as we play in a week and the travel, it makes it really tough for our women to get to class, recover, play the games, and all of the things. So we'll see how it goes.
Yeah. When we were talking earlier about the people, right? Not just the athletes, the student part as well as the athlete part. All of it's affected for sure. Okay. Well, the last one is, and I did ask you this last time, so curious if this changes, if your answers change at all. But bat flips, safer out.
Out.
Okay, same answer. But last time you kind of said you're like, I'm a little more old school. It's just not my style. Is that kind of still where you stand?
Yeah, I think, you're doing your part, and unless it is a really big time game changing play, it's should be what you do.
Yeah. Yeah. You also said last time that the pitcher in you're not necessarily not going to aim for the ribs the next time around. Do you
Yeah,
still feel that way?
might have a little up and in coming in the next at bat.
I don't blame you. I don't blame you. I do feel like not all bat flips are the same, right? There are different, like showing up the other team versus like just fired up with your team, or like the timing. It's like you could be down by 8 runs and you bat flip is different than when you hit like a walk off, right? Like
Absolutely.
it's a spectrum.
It is.
Yeah. Well, there's consistency there for you for that one. I like it, Coach. I like it. But thank you again for joining. I mean, it has been so fun seeing the evolution of the Duke program and just so much more that you have in front of you as well. Regardless of how this thing ends this year, it's just what you all are doing is awesome. So I really appreciate it, especially this time of year.
Thank you.
You taking the time.
Thanks for having me.
It's always interesting to me to talk to coaches about their programs and just the way that they think, the way that they put them together, all of those things. But especially this time of year when they're so clearly just in the zone for competing. But at the same time, life doesn't stop for Mayhem either. I mean, what Marissa Young has gone through over the last year on a personal level with her family and her husband's health struggles. It started right after Super Regionals last year. The first game he could come to in person was at the ACC tournament this year. That's been an entire year of her managing all of this. And I can't emphasize enough how unbelievable it is how she's led her team and how she's supported her kids. And I don't just mean the results, like, yes, some championships for her team. Her kids have even committed to playing college athletics. That's all wonderful, but I more so just mean the strength that she has shown. I've been inspired by that in general, watching her, and then even with my own personal stuff lately. That all comes up for all of us. But with that, let's transition to the foul tip of the week. This week's foul tip is about focusing on one thing at a time. This is not a new concept. If anything, it's been a foul tip of the week more than once. It might have just been phrased differently. But I just think amidst the chaos, it's an important reminder, especially right now. And coaches say it in really every interview, to be honest. Players regurgitate it a lot, but it is a cliche that does have some basis to it. Coach Young talked about a lot, actually, all on social media. She was very open about sharing her story throughout the entire experience with her family over this last year. And she talked a lot about just one day at a time, taking it one day at a time with her family and with her husband's healing journey. Kelly Ford, the Cal State Fullerton head coach, in one of the press conferences after they made it into the regional final at the Stanford Regional, she talked about how she actually literally taped the number 1 with duct tape on the back of her clipboard. She would hold it while she was coaching first base and hold it up to remind players when they're up to bat, hey, take it one pitch at a time. And she explained this, and she said specifically, if we just play this game one pitch at a time, we can compete with anybody. And they showed that over the weekend. And it was actually one of her players, Colby McClinton, who had just hit a grand slam in a game to get to the regional finals. She brought it up as something that was key to their approach and their success. And I think that also showed how much it resonated with the players and wasn't just something that the coach was saying to them, but they actually heard it and felt it. And even little stuff too, right? Like, it's the busiest time of year for me professionally right now. That's not a surprise. I can't manage it all without taking things one pitch at a time. I think of it as sort of each task is maybe one pitch, right? Or one thing at a time in all parts of life. It's always going to apply. So that's it. One pitch at a time. That's the foul tip of the week. You've been listening to Bleav in Softball, part of Bleav Network and presented by BetOnline. The show is available anywhere you get your podcasts, wherever you listen, including Bleav.com and YouTube too. Subscribe to the show, rate the show, and if you liked it, write a review for it. Follow us on X and Instagram at Bleav in Softball. Again, that's BLEAV. You can reach out to me personally on X at JennaBecerra01 and Instagram at JennaBecerra as well. As always, thank you for tuning in and catch you soon.